There are more seats up here if anybody's interested.
The establishment. Planning. Pass back on. Blessed be thy people who are here today. My grandfather was a reverend. Rest in peace. He taught me well. Care for people. I miss him every day. People are very important. We need housing.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Linda Burke. I'd like to welcome you all here. Ward 9 is located on the traditional home of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We recognize and appreciate Indigenous people's historic connection to this place and the ways they continue to shape and strengthen this community. Thank you for coming out tonight and wanting to be informed of Ward 9's candidates for councillor, for showing an interest in Kitchener's municipal affairs. Thank you especially to the candidates for making time in their busy schedules to come this evening. We have one candidate who wasn't able to make it tonight. So just some housekeeping notes. Masks must be worn here in the venue. Candidates may remove their masks when speaking, but the rest of us must keep our masks on. So the format for this evening will have introductory remarks by each of the candidates for 2 minutes each. Prepared questions will be 1 minute each. Questions from the floor will be 1 minute each, and concluding remarks also 1 minute each. So we have 4 prepared questions, and then as many questions from the floor as we can fit in. We also have tables for materials for each of the candidates here at the back, and you're free to take material from each of these tables. Also, there are washrooms located just on this side in the main foyer. So when it comes to questions from the floor, on the post when you came in, we had printed out the text of each of the 4 questions that the candidates have been have prepared responses for in advance. So if you have any question that is not covered by these questions, please feel free to jot it down on one of the pink pieces of paper. If anyone needs one, just pop your hand up. And we can get one of these papers out to you. Just please write your question clearly on one of the index cards available and return it to the table. So Linda Oliver from the Cherry Park Neighborhood Association will be our question moderator this evening. And she will go through your questions and select out those with the most interest to the greatest number of people as best we can. Our timekeeper this evening is Peggy Nichols, who's the chair of the Victoria Park Neighborhood Association. She will give each candidate a ring 10 seconds before their time is up. When your time is exhausted, she'll say time. The candidates must stop when their time is up. If a candidate tends to go a little over time, there'll be a few moments less time for their concluding remarks, just to even things out. So we'll go in order, the order that I have here on my sheet. So we'll start with Deb Chapman for her introductory remarks, then next David Redmond, then Matthew Robson, then Brooklyn Wallace, and Beth Warren. So, Debbie, why don't you go ahead?
Great. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you everybody for being here tonight. As a resident of Ward 9 and your current councillor, what drives me is civic responsibility. I've lived in Kitchener for over 45 years and been involved in grassroots politics for over 25. For the past 4 years, I've worked closely with residents, and many of whom are here tonight, and we work together to try to push for change. While the responsibilities of the ward councillor are considerable and wide-ranging, I will highlight some of my proudest moments. I participated in the Affordability Subcommittee of the Affordable Housing for All Strategy Committee, where we defined affordability rent as 30% of a full-time minimum wage. That works out to about $790 a month. I worked with members of the LGBTQ2+ community to draft and introduce policies that prohibit the use of city facilities for those advocating conversion therapy practices. I supported the downtown cycling grid and active transportation. As a member of the downtown BIA board, I supported post-pandemic initiatives for small businesses. I worked with residents and learned from you as new development proposals were discussed. I worked with residents who spoke up about the city's places and spaces strategy and the need for more parkland in the core. I worked closely with climate change advocates to draft a motion calling on the city to declare a climate emergency, which passed in 2019. I worked with seniors on fixed incomes, concerned about being rent-evicted and having nowhere to go. All of this experience has taught me the value of collaboration. As someone who has worked in both the private and public sectors, teaches part-time at Laurier, and who values research, I approach issues holistically, which means that I understand that behind every decision a councillor makes, there are people that matter. Thank you.
Next is David Redmond.
I think I'll leave the mask on if you don't hear me. Thanks to that was a fantastic answer. Thanks to organizers for putting everything together tonight. I don't have quite the political resume. I'm running an experiment to see if an introvert can run for office. So bear with me. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story just to tell you who I am. The real reason I'm running is my lifelong love of Kitchener and Ward 9, especially in Victoria Park and the areas I grew up in. I've watched couples move in here, become families, one of which is mine. Is it hard to hear me? Sorry.
Sorry, if you're not speaking into the mic, please keep your mask on.
I'll separate myself on this regulation.
That's regulation, not ours, okay?
Well, I saw in Kitchener global history become Kitchener's history as people came in the wake of breakups of Yugoslavia, Vietnamese invasion, diaspora, Civil War in Somalia, and other places in the globe, and become our neighbors and our friends. I've seen festivals grow from a few stands at the back of the park to large events with thousands of devotees, such as myself. But I've also seen family homes become rules of abandoned houses and later empty lots, and then today luxury rental units. While some of the infrastructure that we have is very attractive, the landscape has changed more than just appearance. In my neighborhood, I see couples moving in again and again becoming families, but this time they're renting, so they're both working full time. And we're seeing things like encampments become larger and more common as people have struggled with housing needs, further struggling with things like substance abuse or mental health care, which are both seemingly hard to come by in adequate supply. Like you all, I'm a Kitchener resident. Our city needs to actually move down the road to effective solutions to these. I've enjoyed the best this city and homes have to offer, and I'd like to get back. I'll observe and listen to you and my neighbors to help represent the ward. I'll do the legwork, homework, and the necessary hard work to work with expert staff to understand these issues. I want to give due consideration to all matters to help make careful decisions for a Kitchener that's more affordable, accessible, livable, and sustainable, respecting our heritage for all of our new and lifelong neighbors.
Matthew Robson.
No notes. I have no notes. I care about people. And the system right now is not great. And the last 4 years, I've seen better. I was raised by my grandfather, Lutheran minister, Franklin Street, Lutheran. We're in a church, right? We care about people. I'm an academic, went to school for urban planning, housing. Supply demand is a real thing. If there's more of it, it's cheaper, less expensive for those who need it. We don't protect the establishment. The incumbent, Deborah Chapman, Debbie, what do you prefer? The incumbent, the system, not working out too well. Watching them walk around that path on Thursday, all the politicians. Every child matters. We're not taking care of our children. We're taking care of the establishment and those who already have it. We need more housing. We need a better process. I studied urban planning at Waterloo. Lutheran minister grandfather who raised me. My dad and I don't get along too well, but he's a land developer. Not a land developer, a condominium lawyer. I know the process really well, and I can actually change how the process works. I don't lose. I'm a varsity athlete at Waterloo. I was raised by myself. Me, myself, and I care about people, not about the establishment. Break the system from the inside. Vote for Robson. Love you.
Mic drop.
Brooklyn Wallace.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brooklyn Wallace. I want to start by thanking everyone involved in setting this up and to thank all of you for caring about city elections. I'm running in this election because I think that Kitchener deserves the best of what the world has to offer. If elected, I will focus my work on affordability in housing, city and road design, green spaces and climate change, and social equity and equality. I will do all of this while also working hard to build increased transparency and accountability in local government. More details on my platform or on my website. As a brief introduction to me, I grew up in Brooklyn, Ontario, where my father was the president of the Downtown Business Association, and he instilled in me the importance of local governance, even if I didn't really appreciate it at the time. And yes, that's where the name is from. I will also note that since moving to the region 10 years ago, I've done a wide range of jobs and volunteer work. I've delegated to the region and gone to protests. I've worked in fast food, retail, and in green energy. I've even done some government work. I was an enumerator during the 2016 census, and I've worked during 4 different elections. And there's a common thread in all of those things that gives you a peek at who I am at my core. Throughout every job I've had, I was helping people. Sometimes in small ways, like being the poll clerk that is still somehow enthusiastic about voting after sitting there for 12 hours. But I have always been people first. That's who I am as a person and who I will continue to be as a counselor if I'm given the chance. I look forward to hearing from all of you, and I look forward to serving the community if elected. Thank you.
Beth Warren.
Obviously, I'm Beth Warren because I have a fancy sign. I decided to run for city council because last year I had the opportunity to go back to my roots and work in not-for-profit. Unfortunately, the job didn't work out. They weren't able to afford me. And my husband said, that was the happiest he'd ever seen me work at work. My origins in not-for-profit, I worked in rent geared to income housing. I lived in rent geared to income housing. I was on several boards of directors, and I'm very familiar with the struggles that people have with housing insecurity. My husband and I, during COVID, we rent, and we were terrified that our landlord would sell the property because the housing market was going so insane. And we were terrified that she'd want to make a quick buck, and we were like, what are we going to do if that happens? So I get it. My father was born in Kitchener in 1936. I wasn't born here. I grew up in Hamilton. However, then I moved here over 30 years ago. My children were born here. My grandson was born here. I lived out of the city for about a year for work, and I missed this place. I ended up coming back because Kitchener has my heart. And I just want to do something good for the community. I want to help those people who need affordable housing. That's going to be my number one goal. The other thing, I own my own company right now. I'm self-employed, I work from home, and I'm planning on giving that up so I can devote all my time to this position if elected. Thanks.
Thank you. So we'll move on to our first question. Candidates will have David begin and then go along in order. Housing costs, rent and home prices have increased significantly in Kitchener. What would you do as a city councillor to address the issue of the rising cost of shelter in the city? Please use concrete examples in your answer.
Okay, well, I think that approvals for projects that are going to involve prioritizing affordable units as well as some alternative options, such as tiny homes or additional dwelling units for varied property uses, are things that could be put forth in the immediate future, and something that the city should be considering, as well as projects and proposals that move generally in the direction of affordability. A lot of the time the city is faced with decisions to be made about that, and the choices should be leaning towards those directions. Really, I think the underlying aspect that will come up again and again is additional housing is going to be the factor that adds affordability, and the type of housing needs to be considered as well.
Obviously, 1 minute is not enough time to cover everything, but I'll highlight two key aspects of housing prices that we can address. We can bringing prices down and keeping prices down. Bringing prices down is simple in concept. It's supply and demand. More houses mean lower housing costs.
Agreed.
I know that some people have concerns about intensification because they might be thinking of huge condos and the related traffic increases. However, there are other ways that places like Montreal have used to increase housing that would still bring prices down without bringing in ugly towers. I want to allow and encourage townhouses, three-story walk-ups, and the other non-high-rise housing to be built in the city. This adds more affordable housing, which means that students, maybe even kids and your grandkids, can afford to live here, and that downsizers have local options that don't mean moving away. How do we keep prices down? Wide selection of housing types allow for diversity in the incomes of people living there, which helps counteract gentrification. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I'll be quick, short and sweet, so to speak.
So I do for a living, right? Housing. I'm not ashamed of it. We need more of it. And those who have it should give it away if they have it. That's how I was raised on the farm. You gotta work. You can't support those who already have it because the established neighborhoods, that means the rich neighborhoods. I'm not poor. I never will be because I'm a worker. We need more of it. Faster process. Facilitate. Don't disintegrate. Oh my God, the shadowing is going to be so bad in my neighborhood. So that was rude. I'm just so fed up with it. I support the people around me. All people. Black, white. Doesn't matter. Rich, poor. And that's all for now. We'll talk more later. Vote for us and for change for the people.
Yeah?
Cheers.
I've been appalled at how the housing prices have gone up in this area over the last few years, and I'm sure many are with me on that. I believe that the city and the region could do something to make sure that rental properties, in specifically, I know most of like renters' issues are covered under the Landlord and Tenant Act, so it's a provincial issue. However, I think the city and the region could do something to stop landlords from turfing out, saying, oh, my mom's going to move in, turf them out and then raise the rent and put somebody else in there. It's appalling. And a lot of those people, I've met people who that's happened to, and they've either merely ended up homeless or they have ended up homeless. These are not people who are not hard workers. They aren't mentally ill. They are just a victim of circumstance and the economy. And I think the city and the region, if I were a councillor, I would push to put some rules in place so that couldn't happen, for one. Also, we need more. I don't think anything new has been built in a significant manner in 20 some odd years. So I'd like to see more housing built.
We should moratorium on housing. Moratorium on housing.
Debbie?
$1 million for the LRT system.
Thank you.
You can do nothing, Deborah.
Matthew?
I'll talk.
Matthew? It's Deb's turn.
So we have an affordable housing crisis in the region. As a former member of Kitchener's Affordable Housing Strategy Advisory Committee, it was clear to me that the greatest need for affordable housing is at the full-time minimum wage level. Recognizing that developers are not interested in addressing the affordable housing deficit, I will push for the adoption of an inclusionary zoning bylaw, which is not appealable, and which will permit the city to require that every new residential building in the core contain affordable housing. I want to see the bylaw require at least 20% affordable units at a rental rate of $790 per month, which is 30% of full-time minimum wage. I will also continue to support the city donating additional properties and waiving development charges for not-for-profit organizations building deeply affordable units. Thank you.
Question 2, we'll start with Brooklyn. There have been many large tower developments proposed or recently built in downtown Kitchener. At least 60% of these housing units consist of one-bedroom or smaller units. As a councillor, what would you do to address the need for more affordable family-sized units, 2 to 3 bedroom, to allow diversity of households to live downtown?
I see and understand the concern for the lack of units with more than one bedroom. This impacts people in many ways in various life stages. Where do people live when they retire and downsize? Where do new families and students get started? Where do newcomers afford to live when they arrive in the region? I'd also ask, how do other cities handle this? The answer to all of these questions is the missing middle. I want to allow these smaller, more affordable and compact buildings by allowing stacked townhouses and triplexes throughout the city, especially within walking distance of public transit. These buildings are the way that other cities provide affordable housing to growing families and are how we maintain a healthy, affordable city. As a bonus, the density from these houses also allow for more efficient public transit, bikeability and walkability, helping with climate change, and yeah, thank you very much.
When I worked in housing and in my position last year with the not-for-profit, I've seen some of the units that people live in that are affordable. Sure, they're affordable, but they're in terrible shape, a lot of them. And there's so many issues to be considered here. One thing, I think more needs to be constructed downtown. I think transitional housing needs to be in place so that the people who are on Ruse Island in Willow River Park have someplace to go. That's no way to live. Humans shouldn't live like that. It's terrible. They need something concrete. They need a transitional housing until more housing can be built in the community. It makes me cry to see these people who don't have anywhere to go other than a tent. And some of the housing units that are affordable, it's supposed to be 30% of your gross monthly income. And it's been that way for many years. However, I know people who are paying 50% and upwards, and that's no way to live.
Debbie?
Developers are building for investors. They are not building homes for residents. It is more profitable to build studio and one-bedroom units than three-bedroom units. According to a recent study, no new 3+ bedroom units were constructed in central Kitchener between 2018 and 2020. It was clear when the region updated its official plan that we need a diversity of housing types, especially low to mid-rise buildings, townhouses, stacked townhouses, affordable rental units, and co-op housing for families. I will continue to push for greater diversity where families can enjoy the benefits of living downtown. We also need an updated zoning plan for the core to replace the 1985 bylaws, a plan that captures the public's vision of the downtown, a plan that puts community first, one that makes it clear to developers what our vision is.
So, the other candidates have spoken already about the plan and the requirements that we were planning to talk about the need for adhering to these kind of minimums and the mixes. And it's absolutely correct. The city should already continue to prioritize developments that are put forth that include this mix of units. If they're not being built year over year over year and they're being built for profitability, of course, that's a priority. There's already minimums in these plans, and we need to support them and maintain adherence. I would definitely be contributing to these kind of measures when they're put forth. As well, the mid-rise and infill would increase these housing options without moving everything towards tower developments with unsustainable density. Mid-density and smart infill leads to better walkability and sustainability and more livable spaces.
I'm sorry I get too emotional about housing and people. That's why I walk away sometimes, right? It's from the heart. Anyways, sorry. We need to just think about people. That's the important thing here. We're all people here. We're all struggling. You're watching it right now before your eyes, not in this church, just around you. And when we need it. I miss my grandfather today. He was right here speaking, not in this church, but other churches. And he cared for people. He was on the streets helping people. I've had homeless people living with me. They're not homeless anymore. Mike Morris is a very good person to respect him. I don't support the establishment. I support people and ding, ding, ding. I shouldn't pause so much there.
Thank you.
See, make you laugh a little bit too. Be a person.
Matthew, just if I could interject, we'll begin with your answer to our third question.
What was the question?
One major concern for downtown residents is the presence of encampments downtown, notably in Victoria Park. What long-term solutions can the city adopt to end homelessness in Kitchener?
Don't call them encampments. They're settling on this space, that's their home. Right? The encampment word is like, the CBC radio asked me a question, which I asked them back, like, what's a controlled encampment? I was raised by a lawyer, rightly or wrongly. I'm not Irish too, but sometimes I just start talking about Irish. I'm not crazy. I'm not a politician yet. Is that a bad joke? Is this stand-up? Sorry.
Answer the question, please.
The encampments need, we need to support people, dignity for people. That's the key thing. And everyone's homeless for a different reason. It could be trauma, it could be mental illness, it could be, but you can't label them all the same way. That's the important thing. We're all people for different reasons where we're at, rightly or wrongly. Is that a good summary?
No, what can be done?
What can be done? Just push the region to actually do something about it. Push the province for money.
Thank you. Brooklyn? Sorry, Matthew, could you put your mask back on? Thank you.
To start, I will say this. Victoria Park should be a park first and not an encampment. In the short term, I plan to work with the region to fast track the selection of land to use for a sanctioned and controlled hybrid encampment, making sure to include the unhoused community's expertise. There are plenty of unused buildings and parking lots in the city, and I will not let people freeze over the winter. When it comes to prevention, it is no coincidence that housing prices and homelessness have seen similar spikes in these last couple of years by increasing the number of homes being built and by making those new homes more affordable and have more options, we can bring housing costs down. But that alone is not enough. Our social safety net has holes in it, and I don't know about you, but I don't trust a net that only catches people most of the time. I will continue to advocate for the Housing First method that Medicine Hat, Houston, and all of Finland have seen great success with. And I will continue to advocate for the people in the encampments.
Thank you. Beth?
I also dislike the word encampment because to me that sounds like they've done something wrong. Like the encampments during World War II, etc. So at the moment I can't think of a better word, but what I think should be done is transitional housing should be set up for those people in Victoria Park. For example, the Grand River Transit building has been sitting there empty, except for when they were doing COVID shots. It's just sitting there going to waste. And yes, it's partly regional, partly the city, partly municipal. They should work collaboratively to create traditional housing, use that building. Eventually it can become something else, but use that building until they actually can build affordable housing for those people. Like, again, people shouldn't have to live like that. It disturbs me greatly, and that is my focus. Many of the candidates up here have made excellent points, and I agree with them.
Can I respond to one point?
And I'll pass the microphone to Shirley.
Not really, no.
So, in keeping with the format, we're going to move along at this point to question 4. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
Drunk-on power up there. Debbie, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we have a crisis of homelessness unprecedented in the region. Long term, we need more subsidized supportive housing. This can be done quickly with modular homes. Every level of government has a responsibility to solve this crisis. Recently, the region of Waterloo, the level of government responsible for homelessness, affordable housing, and shelters, released a 4-point plan including sanctioned encampments, managed encampments, and more shelter beds. While none of these provide permanent appropriate housing options, they would serve to ensure safety for unhoused residents as winter approaches. The island in Victoria Park is inappropriate as it lacks the basic services needed for a managed encampment. I want to see each city, township, and the region itself dedicate a piece of public land for a managed encampment with porta potties, portable showers, running water, electricity, a dining tent, common area, and access to wraparound services. Thank you.
David?
This particular question, I don't think a minute is nearly enough to get into the elements around homelessness and housing insecurity in the region. I'll hit on just a couple of points, but my thoughts on this are much broader, and hopefully it's an ongoing discussion that we have in the region and in the city and in the ward. There's not very many people that argue against housing as a basic human right. I don't think very many people would argue that Victoria Park is likewise the correct space for an encampment managed otherwise with access to additional services or otherwise. The right answer, of course, is more permanent housing, affordable housing, the right kind of mix of housing. In the interim, crisis management is necessary if there's people that are in jeopardy. Obviously, there's no question that these things need to be addressed immediately. Cold weather coming, these kind of concerns. I'm not a big fan overall as a long-term solution or an ongoing solution of managed encampments, especially looking at the ongoing costs of handling that versus funneling into housing development and longer-term solutions. Shelter space and alternative housing options, I think, are a better option to look at for that type of funding, and those are the choices that I'd be supporting.
Thank you. So for question number 4, we'll begin with that. No. Victoria Park is Ward 9's largest park. In recent years, usage of the park has increased substantially. Could you put your mask on, please? Sorry, we're just in keeping with the format, and the venue requires masks.
You started, David finished. You had to adjourn.
So in recent years, usage of the park has increased substantially, and the park has incurred more wear and tear. With more people moving downtown, how would you address the need for more green space downtown?
Just to follow up on the last question, one thing I wanted to point out is I think it's important to keep those people in the downtown region because that's where their services are. We can't ship them off to Conestoga or someplace. However, as far as the green space is concerned, I know there's been talk about leveling the GRT site and putting more green space there. I think that could happen. Or it could become a center for the Indigenous. I think both are great options. There are other properties in downtown where the buildings are sitting there empty. You look at where the Rumpel Felt factory is. I don't know what's going to happen with that. That could be a green space. There are many other places where the buildings are just sitting there, and it could be the city could buy it, turn it into additional green space in the downtown core. I know Rumpel Felt is in Ward 10, but that was the first empty building I thought of. Anyhow, but I think there are many opportunities to create more green space in the downtown core.
Debbie?
Thank you. So the city's places and spaces strategy is a good start to understanding the green space deficit, especially in the core of the city. Within the city, a more equitable approach needs to be found. We need to ensure adequate green space for the general well-being and mental health of all residents. As density increases in the core, people living in small condos need places to walk their dogs and connect with nature. The impacts from climate change require more green space to reduce urban heat islands. While engaging with residents of Ward 9, some of the suggestions that emerged include converting public property into parkland, acquiring new properties for parks, and requiring developers to increase setbacks and include parkland on their sites. Residents suggested converting part or all of Graham Street into parkland, acquiring part of Ontario Seeds property for public use, and extending the entrance to Victoria Park to include all or part of the former bus depot. All of these suggestions deserve serious consideration. Thank you.
all of a sudden the park is full and everybody's using it. But we recognize, of course, that that kind of demand represents a need for more park space. Part of being smart in our development and approvals, creative in our infrastructure projects always include consideration of green, livable, shared spaces that all community members can access. These can be part of development projects, such as the setbacks, but otherwise planned into community-type spaces that include green space rather than just parking lots or paved squares. Unused spaces might also be viable for new park space, just the transit hub, but other smaller corridors that may just be predominant to drive by and don't have any development plans whatsoever. City-owned properties are particularly available for this type of development, although we should be continuing to work with developers to make this space available.
Matthew?
I'll be very quick and concise. So 3 bedrooms. To develop a property, you need to perform, right? To get funding from someone. Developers just don't build really good out of their heart. They're not evil people, they're actually providing housing for people. We need more housing. So the bank doesn't give money if you don't show performance. And 3 bedrooms cost about $1,000 a square foot. So 8 times, very expensive. But that's a basic principle that gets lost sometimes. Next point. Parking dedication. Maybe we should have cut that in half with the province and maybe have half that for supportable housing. The city of Kitchener has how much money stuck in parkland dedication that's not doing anything with it? Do you know the number, Councillor Chapman? A lot. Millions and millions and millions of dollars sitting there doing nothing. Because government, unfortunately, is inefficient. I don't like politicians. I wish I would be a politician very soon. More time? The Rumble site's dirty, by the way. We'll never redevelop it. It's a province, though. It's a system.
Thank you.
It flows down. I'm an urban planner, trained from Waterloo. Also a varsity athlete, too.
Brooklyn?
I love Victoria Park, or Willow River Park, as some people call it. I will always prioritize maintaining and keeping it clean. However, it is also overused. Part of my plan to alleviate that is providing other viable and nice to be in parks and green space that can help spread people out. There are plenty of underused parking lots and even streets that could have green space added to them. In Cabbagetown, Toronto, they recently renovated their main street to have green space on the side of it that is big enough for sandboxes and picnic tables and benches, and it is beautiful. I dream of a green, shaded, walkable neighborhood, and I will use tactics like that to add bits of beautiful green space all throughout the city. If we make more parks and streets beautiful and usable and walkable, Victoria Park won't be the only great place in the city to walk and play in, which will spread park usage throughout the city instead of only the one.
Thank you. So we're gonna, now we'll begin to take questions from the floor. So we'll go in reverse order. So we'll begin with Beth, and then we'll make our way down this way. So the first question is kind of a broad one, but for all of the candidates, what is the major concern that you bring to your prospective time as city councillor? Go ahead, Beth.
Well, I think it's obvious the homeless is a huge concern for everyone in the region. We're about 5 years to becoming what Toronto is, with homeless people sleeping on grates and stuff. We do have some of that now, but they're all over in Toronto. And I know they're hopefully trying their best, but I haven't seen an improvement. On June 8th, 1995, I was an active laborer, and I drove my he's my ex-husband now, my husband's crappy union gas van down to vote against Mike Harris because he was going to take away provincial funding for housing. This is a subject that's been close to my heart for many, many years. I've seen people, a family of 5 living in a 1-bedroom apartment. It's appalling. We need to do something about the homeless problem and about affordable housing, and that's my biggest concern for Ward 9 and for the city of Kitchener. Do I have more time? All right.
Brooklyn?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, what is the major concern for you that you bring to the job of being city councillor?
So I have a lot of reasons for running. Like I said during the introductory remarks, but my biggest concern is homelessness and housing prices. My favorite concern, or like the one that I want to talk about the most, is road design, city design, and making, copying the great ideas from around Europe and bringing them here. Oslo, Norway, which has a population almost 3 times of our city, had 0 traffic fatalities, or 1 car-related fatality and 0 cycling and pedestrian ones during the year of 2019. This was before COVID. And this was only possible because of a push 15 years ago or so to make the city safer. We need to take those ideas. Thank you.
So it's missed sometimes who actually has control of the system, right? It's regional government. Housing is regional. It's missed, right? The road design, it's all regional. So like we're running for city council, it's not a city issue, it's a regional issue, generally speaking. All those major roads are regional roads. We gotta be able to like know the region really well and work with them. Know your enemy, so to speak. The OMB too, it's cool. When councillors turn down applications for things that they actually believe in, to let the big bad OMB and the province turn it down versus them. Oh my goodness. Sorry being very sarcastic there, but it's so frustrating. That costs money. You actually lose the affordable housing component when that happens. So, Victoria and Park, that was a great proposal, a good developer, a nice design. When you knock down stories off Belmont Village, 3 stories, that creates more affordable, less affordable housing. I call it attainable housing. So you push it off to the bad province or the OMB. It's just politics. I don't like politicians. That's why I'm going for politics. Vote for Robson.
David?
First, let me preface by saying that primarily my issue is take a backseat to listening to resident issues that are brought forth. My job is primarily to be responsive if I were to be elected as a councillor, understand what's important to the people in the ward and the neighborhoods, and represent those. That being said, I think one of the number 1 concerns overarching most discussions tonight has to do with affordability and increasing costs, even those that are housing secure. See spiraling costs in the markets affect them, things like property taxes and mortgage rates potentially. So it's a far-reaching impact, and obviously this is forefront of most people's minds. Soon would become a little bit of a focus, although I wouldn't want to be overly narrow-minded and say that was my one thing that I'd be interested in. Walkability and accessible and usable spaces are probably near to my heart as far as the ward and the area goes, development. I'm a walker and a cyclist, and these things are important to me, so I'd be focusing on those. Comments were made about the division of these responsibilities to the region and the province, but obviously the city intersects with other stakeholders, and those kind of relationships need to be considered as well.
Thank you. And I would agree housing is the biggest concern here. We often hear that supply and demand is going to bring housing affordability to us. And I would argue the contrary. There's no place in the country, Vancouver, Toronto, or any big city where we see more demand bringing down prices. And furthermore, it's a known fact that 25% of housing stock in this country is owned by investors. There was an article in the Record just recently that pointed out that 2/3 of the Garment Street building, the tower, a relatively new tower, is 2/3 of the building is unoccupied. If it were really a supply and a demand issue, every one of those units would be occupied.
That's a lie, by the way.
It's not.
I'm sorry,
In downtown, we far exceed our density goals, higher than both what the city has set and what the province has set. The province set the goals, the city put higher goals, and according to a recent report by the city, we far exceed our density goals. 20,000 development permits await construction in this city that have not been started. So I think we have to be very careful when we talk about supply and demand. We need to build purpose-built affordable housing.
Thank you. We'll begin with Brooklyn for our next question. This question has multiple parts. So the first part is, presuming that you don't live in Ward 9, why did you decide to run in this ward? And the second part of the question is about any association with developers. For instance, has anyone accepted campaign donations from developers, or do they have any kind of connections or relationships with developers? So we'll begin with Brooklyn.
So I live across the street. I live on the other side of King Street. I'm only one house away. I chose this ward because, I think that the Ward 10 candidates are pretty great, but also because of the incumbents' voting record when it comes to housing. We need units to be coming in, and we need a wide variety of types of units to be coming in. What was the second half of the question?
Any connections with developers?
Oh, and I am development friendly. I am not developer friendly. I am very much a climate forward person. I have education in renewable energy technology, and while I recognize the need for new housing, I also recognize the need for sustainability. I would never accept donation from anyone I knew was a developer.
Thank you. David?
Blank on the first part of the question.
Do you live in Ward 9? If not,
Ward 9. I do live in Ward 9. I've lived in Ward 9 my whole life. The reason that I chose to run in Ward 9 is because it's the space in the city that I'm most intimately familiar with, and it's my home, and I understand probably the best out of all the other wards. I would imagine that makes me the most suited to represent. Ward 10 is nearby, and other wards have other things that I'm familiar with and that I've used the spaces in, but Ward 9 is very much near and dear to my heart and the area that I know the best, even though it may be the toughest race in the city. I have no relationship to any developers. I've not accepted any donations from any developers. I'm not anti-development. Development isn't something that's going away. Growth, both physical and economic in the city, is a reality and a necessity. We just need to be smart about the kind of relationships we cultivate with developers and the sort of projects that we want to condone as a city when we just put before us.
Thank you. So I live in Ward 9. I've lived here, I think, 25 years. Although I did grow up here. I've lived here many more years than that, but I do live in Ward 9. I have no connection to developers other than when a development proposal comes to me, and I will often try to negotiate affordable housing units in their build. I might try to negotiate 2-bedroom apartments. I will try to negotiate green space that's available, public pathways through the development. I often ask to ensure that there are EV chargers in every parking space in the development, to ensure that there's adequate bicycle parking spots. I ask them to think about net zero ready infrastructure in all of their builds. I ask them to look at, green roofs. So I do negotiate with developers. I will not accept money from developers. I'm not anti-development, but I do think that there is a role that I play as a city councillor in negotiating developments that are people-friendly, community-friendly. Thank you.
Beth?
I'm a messy drinker. Thankfully, it's water. For a brief period of time last year, I worked part-time for the Waterloo Regional Home Builders Association. However, I don't have any, and some of them are developers, but I don't have relationships with them other than casual, friendly, such things. And I haven't accepted any money from them at all. I've lived in Ward 9 in the current place where I live for over 12 years. When I originally moved to the region, or to the city, over about 35 years ago, I moved into Ward 9, moved around for a while. I'm missing part of the question, but
Living in Ward 9 and also any connections with developers.
all right, then I've answered it. I thought that was more. No, I've lived in Ward 9 for 12 years now. My husband and I have lived there for 11, and I just love the area. I love the Iron Horse Trail, Victoria Park. It was suggested that I run in Ward 10, and I don't feel comfortable with that.
Thank you. So just a quick note on format. The format was circulated to all of the candidates in advance, and so we're going to move forward with the expectation that disruption isn't helpful in terms of helping everyone who's taken the time here to come and listen. So, so I thank everyone for their patience. I understand it's not comfortable to wear masks, and people do feel passionately about these subjects, but I just wanted to convey that. So the next question, we're going to start with David. Where do you stand on ensuring new buildings are carbon neutral, given that we are facing a climate emergency?
Definitely a good question, and something that deserves a lot of consideration as we move forward with development in the city. Again, I would defer back to residents. My stance on carbon neutrality and net zero development isn't the most important consideration. Hearing what matters to everyone and the type of developments that are necessary is really important. Some developments, by their nature, are not going to be able to achieve carbon neutrality at the outset. Some developments are not going to realistically pursue net zero. But it needs to be an ongoing goal towards sustainability and livability for any development project that we begin, not just for housing type developments, but for infrastructure projects and other things like that that don't normally show up on the radar when we talk about green buildings. Ideas of alternate power built into them, such as solar, but even wind direction and other things that are important considerations in development. And some of you may have noticed that affects our streets and avenues when large buildings appear. These things all deserve proper consideration while we're looking at building proposals, especially at the type that asks for variances.
Debbie?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So, in 2019, the city declared a climate emergency. And in order to be effective and actually meet the goals set out when that emergency was declared, we committed to reducing our greenhouse gases by 50% by the year 2030. One of the problems that I've run up against is trying to request from developers that they include net zero infrastructure, or at least more and more I hear that they're doing net zero ready on some components of the builds, but not anything close to a carbon neutral building. But what I would like to do is to continue to work with the province so that they can delegate authority to municipalities to require these things of the new builds. At this point, the city has no authority to actually say, you have to put these things in your buildings. So, and that's become a bit of a problem as far as I'm concerned. So I would continue to work with the province to try and get that authority. Thank you.
Beth?
I agree with both Debbie and David about their suggestions and their viewpoints. And as Debbie pointed out, the city doesn't really have a lot of say in that at this time, but I would hope that through discussions with the provincial government that the city could become more responsible for that and hold the developers to that accountability.
I love carbon neutrality. I took a class on it while I was in school for my renewable energy tech, doing LEED certification training. I will mention carbon neutrality can be sort of a lie. If a company is putting out as much CO2 as they want and then paying it off by making a whole bunch of neutral energy, I mean, it is still helpful, but it is also like you're faking it. Our incumbent said that the city is committed to 50% by 2030, but if you, I feel like this might be misleading. Because she herself was the one who proposed the wording of that was added to it that made our commitment in principle hitting 50% by 2030, but in actuality only hitting 30% by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next question, the topic is the next question, traffic as a result of high rises. So the question reads, I am worried about increased traffic once the buildings with exits to Walter Street are open. There is one near the corner of Glasgow that will exit very close to the corner where there have already been accidents and a number of towers at the other end by Bellington.
Okay, so when there's a new development, a traffic study is always required to be done, especially in, depending on the size of the towers. One thing that I think needs to change is that when a traffic study is done, it should not just be in the immediate vicinity of the building in question, but should also include the traffic that's coming from other buildings along the whole corridor. And we don't do that right now. And it's not mandated, but that doesn't mean that I don't think we should do it, because it gives a false perception of what traffic will actually look like when that building is finished. And think of Victoria Street, for example. There's the Garment Club, there's one Victoria, there's the Garment one, and then there's the Victorian Park proposal. And when the Victorian Park proposal came to council, there was no mention of the other towers that were, halfway down the block. So I think that the way we do the traffic studies to understand what the traffic impact will have with the new development needs to change.
Yeah.
Yes, I think in any circumstance when a new build is going up, I think more thought should be put into the traffic studies and maybe do it on a wider scale, not just that corner, but a certain length of area. I'm just missing Mr. Robson, I think. That was a joke. I think more thought needs to be put into these traffic studies to make sure that people are safe, especially with a lot of new bike lanes coming in, that has to be taken into consideration as well, because I know, for example, the bike lane on Joseph, somebody was hit in the bike lane recently. And I know for a fact because a friend of mine lives there and they left the bike on his porch because they had no place else to put it. So I think making the residents aware of where bike lanes have been put in and the changes to the roads is really important because a lot of people don't know.
Could you repeat the question for me, please?
So this is about traffic as a result of high rises. So the question reads, I am worried about increased traffic once the buildings with exits to Walter Street are open. There is one near the corner of Glasgow that will exit very close to the corner where there have already been accidents, and a number of towers at the other end by Wellington.
So this relates back to my favorite thing, urban design. I think that the way that our roads right now are designed sort of irresponsibly. There are many regional roads that I would not be able to directly affect, but there are many local roads that I would be able to. When it comes to traffic studies for future buildings, I think that we also need to keep in mind that we want people to be driving less. It might seem like maybe the traffic study isn't taking everything into account, but are we taking everything into account when we ignore the fact that we want the city to be more bikeable and walkable in the future? I do agree that bringing the scope of or increasing the scope of the traffic studies is a sensible idea.
Some of the traffic concerns that we have, it's certainly not getting any better. So just smart usage really needs to be part of the solution overall.
Thank you. So the next question from the floor has to do with air pollution from outside fires. Many people have asthma or other respiratory conditions that are made worse by breathing polluted air. For some years, Kitchener, unlike Waterloo, has permitted backyard fires. In built-up neighborhoods, this enters houses and makes being outside in the evening unpleasant. What is your position on permitting backyard fires?
So right now, like backyard fires in Kitchener are legal, but they're actually illegal almost all the time. If you know the regulations really well, which I do, that's what I do for a living. I'm not a land developer. I'm an urban planner / facilitator of housing. I know the system really well. So almost all fire pits you see in the backyards are not legal in Kitchener. I enjoy community, and community has fires in their backyard. They just can't go. I was raised on a farm, Ayr, Ontario. Old school, simple. Less is more. I have other points in my head. I'm just kind of tired of this point. It's been a long week for me. But I'm a person, and I do this for a living. The politicians who work for us sometimes, I don't generalize too much, but they actually don't know what they're talking about. They talk, but don't actually say anything. I'm very simple. Populism is a real thing. I'm not Donald Trump. Don't like the guy. I'm done.
Thank you. David?
It's a great question, and it's one that I think is pretty clear-cut and could be potentially divisive. I would refer back to the idea that this is a community consultation thing. If the majority of people that are affected by this are opposed to it, then I feel like as a councillor that would be what I'd be required to represent. I'm personally not opposed to permitted fires. I think that's correct, and the number of them that are actually permitted based on property boundaries are very small. And there's a factor, of course, of just being neighborly and understanding if there's people around you that are sensitive, maybe it's not the right thing to do. And many of us in this ward know and talk to our neighbors and might know when that's something that is feasible or isn't feasible. Not everything can, unfortunately, be that amenable and cooperative, so sometimes we do have to have balance and effect. But again, it would come down to sort of the needs of the community, on making a decision when revisiting that permitting right now. It is legal and it's not something that I'm jumping up and down to immediately change. We have, I think, much larger concerns in the region that are priority right now.
City, not region.
Debbie? Yeah, this is a trick question, I feel. Air pollution. Yeah, backyard fires, also smokers have come to be a concern to people. I think we've declared a climate emergency. Am I against backyard fires? No, I would not say I am. But I agree with David that, you know, that would have to be, any changes to the current bylaw would have to be done through a broader community consultation. I think it is something that we should revisit because it hasn't been revisited for a number of years at the city. And simply because we've got this climate emergency that we've declared, backyard fires produce greenhouse gas emissions. So it's something to certainly revisit. Thank you.
I'm gonna drop in the pockets.
And Beth?
Go to Washington.
We live in townhomes, so our backyards are extremely close together, and if somebody in one of the yards lit a bonfire, it would be extremely disruptive. However, and it wouldn't be safe. I think the bylaw should be revisited. I don't hear of any terrible problems other than pollution. I don't hear houses burning down or fences catching on fire or anything of that nature. But I do think it's a real concern because it bothers some people. So I think it should be revisited with the input of the community.
Personally, I love the smell of a backyard campfire. It makes me so happy. This question reminds me of one that was in a debate or one of the all candidates meetings for Ward 9. I think it was 2018, but it might have been 2010. I've been in the tank. And Debbie Chapman's response I thought was funny because it was a neighborhood dispute, and her response was mostly, "You can talk to them about it. You don't need me to do it." Of course, this comes down to what the community's feeling on it is. I do know I would be sad to see it go. When I moved from Waterloo into Kitchener, the sane bylaws was one of the major appealing factors. The fact that like fireworks are so much more restricted, tiny homes are allowed, and the backyard fires are allowed, really makes the city feel like it's being legislated by people and not neighborhood associations. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final question from the floor is, what is your plan to engage youth and young people in local government? There's a concern that people sometimes wait until retirement to engage in these issues. Beth?
Well, I think education is key anytime it comes down to youth involvement. When I was in high school, I was student council president because I had a lot of ideas for the school, which was my community. And I think getting kids interested in politics is key to them to know what to expect later in life, what they can do for their community, and make them very civic-minded. So my suggestion would be to have more interaction between city council and the school system, go into the schools and talk to them about what you do, or what Debbie does, for example, and answer their questions, because they're a lot brighter than some people think. They're not all just smoking dope and hanging out in variety store parking lots.
Debbie? Or is it? Oh, no, sorry, we're going.
Is it?
No.
Okay. Okay. I keep losing track of what way it's going.
Me too.
This is a great question for me because I'm young. I'm only 26, and I feel like most people my age don't know anything about city government or even know that they can run or that they can be involved in a myriad of other ways. I think part of it is just seeing people like you up there. Renters, when the city council is made out of entirely homeowners and a lot of landlords, it doesn't feel inclusive to renters. It doesn't feel inclusive to young people if everyone is over the age of 35. Not that I know the age of any of the people in council. When the demographics of the council don't represent the community, it helps, it pushes people down and it discourages you from even caring. That's something I've encountered a lot while going door to door, is just people who don't care.
I think for engagement, certainly education is a key. A lot of people are unfamiliar with sort of what matters are really city matters, regional matters, provincial matters, and how all those things intersect. Really engaging people early on, let them understand what those things are is super important to having them be interested and involved. The city, I think, needs to operate as an entity that is sort of approachable and has a bit of personality, maybe isn't what I want to say, but relating to the city as an organization that people can approach and connect with and really understand what it's up to, what it's about. And that involves all the individuals that work at and for the city being accessible and approachable and engaging with members of the community that way. Some of the consultation signs and these programs and things that go out are a step in the right direction, but there needs to be more outreach where the city just is, making connections with individuals so they understand exactly what the city is, who the people that are part of the city are, and what they can do for you.
Thank you. Well, I can't say I'm a youth, but I can say that the city, the kayak body at the city does a great job at encouraging youth to get involved. But I do think that there are ways that the outreach that kayak does could be expanded to include youth from more diverse backgrounds. Some thoughts are to, use those pages at City Hall so that they can be sitting in the chambers and listening to council meetings or other meetings that take place in the chambers. Create internships for youth. We have internships for university students, but we could certainly bring high school students and younger students into the fold. Mentorships, where counselors would pair up with youth. So I think there are a lot of ways that could be done. I'd also like to see the clerks do a better job around election time to try and recruit youth to run for office, but also simply to engage them and help them understand the political process and the roles of the different governments, because it can be quite complicated. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point in the evening, I want to thank you all for your patience. We're going to turn the mic to the candidates to give their concluding remarks. So we'll move this way across the table. So go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to thank the organizers and my fellow candidates and all of you for coming here this evening. I'm very happy to see so many people wanting the best for the residents of Ward 9 and the city as a whole. The questions asked here this evening mirror the questions that I've heard at the door over the past 2 months. The city I envision is one where everyone has adequate housing, one of equity, where all voices are represented at the table, a city that meets its 50% reduction of greenhouse gas emission goals by 2030, and a vibrant, livable city with plenty of parkland and 15-minute communities. A welcoming place for people from all walks of life. I believe there's more that needs to be done to build on the momentum that has been growing over the past 4 years. I hope I can count on your support on October 24th to continue on this journey. Follow me on social media, visit my website, or feel free to call me with your concerns and questions. And vote Chapman on October 24th. Thank you.
I want to thank the organizers as well for putting us all in this room with a chance to answer some of these questions and respond to concerns of the community. And thanks to the candidates for the really thoughtful answers that they've given. Certainly there's things that come to mind for me that I get to learn from, and that's the nice part of working in this community that way. It's really the same thing that we need to do going forward. I've repeatedly talked about the responsive nature of a councillor position and really how much, to me, the role is about listening to residents, understanding what their concerns are, and bringing those as a representative to the city. It's really important, of course, that we have our own values and things that we can share with you and communicate on, but primarily our job is to be representative. The same issues have come up again and again. It's very clear what some of the primary issues are. My ones for the city definitely involve housing affordability and security for all the residents, regardless of their walk of life or where they come from or how they came to be in this situation. Both housing insecure and housing secure, just to keep that affordability and accessibility ongoing. Part of that involves smart infill, as I've mentioned, respect for our heritage, that we have the buildings that are here now, and walkable, usable, and shareable spaces, including green spaces, as part of development strategies.
Thank you again for everyone for coming out. I just want to make a couple clarifications. I don't want to get rid of cars. I like cars. I just don't want them to be the most efficient form of travel. I want biking and transit and walking to be that. I also spend a lot of time in Ward 9. It's more than just the place across the street. I spend a lot of time here. I want a Kitchener that is made out of the best ideas that humanity has to offer. I am a global person. I'm a person that's online, probably a little bit too much, but I am a person that is going to be living here for probably 60 years. And that means that the decisions that I would be making are decisions that will be better for the city for 60 years, not just for the next election cycle, for the entire time that I will be there and for the people who come next. Thank you.
I think we all agree that housing and the homeless is the most important issue facing Ward 9 and indeed the city of Kitchener, so I'm not too sure I have to elaborate on that. I have a very diverse background. I've done a lot of things in my lifetime, but what has brought me the most pleasure over the years is working for nonprofits. And I wanted to get back into it for years, and the city of Kitchener isn't exactly a not-for-profit, but it is helping others, which is at the core of my being my most favorite thing in the world in various ways. I do it in various little ways each day, and I hope that I can do it for a larger community, that I can help solve some problems in the city, help with the homeless, help with housing, climate change, whatever is necessary. And I'm willing to devote all my energy and all my time to doing that. BethWarren.ca. It'll be on later today.
But can I ask more questions personally? And Alex had a family emergency, and that's why he couldn't be here.
So before we turn the evening to the mingle portion, I just wanted to say thank you to Peggy Nichols, our timekeeper, to Linda Oliver, our session moderator, to Shirley Gosselin for helping with sound, to everyone who share your concerns and your questions to the church for allowing us to use this space, and for everyone that's come to help set up and who will be here later this evening still cleaning up. Thank you also to the candidates for taking the, your time out of your schedule to come. And thank you to everyone for spending one of the last lovely summer evenings right in here with all of us. It's a very important endeavor. So thank you. So at this point, you're invited to mingle and talk individually with the candidates.